I think that I had made like one, maybe two videos, and I got a call from my mom, and she was like, I could hear it in her voice, on the verge of tears. With my husband's family, they disowned us. And being ex-Mormon and being vocal about it was part of what led to that. And my dad, we got in a fight about it, and he said, I don't care that you left the church. And his actual like quote was, good for you, you left the church, but keep your mouth shut about it.
Ooh.
And that stung.
You're like, Dad, watch this.
Yeah. And I think it was either like the next day or 2 days later that I made my first YouTube video. And I don't think I've ever like told him that he's the reason, but he's actually the entire reason. I didn't have any friends that had left. I didn't have any family that had left. I had nobody to fall back on. I came from this place of feeling like a persecution complex where everybody was out to get me because I'm Mormon. But I never had anybody be mean to me about being Mormon ever. It was when I joined the ex-Mormon space and started sharing negative opinions about the church and sharing negative experiences I'd had, where all of a sudden I had an influx of people who really hated not only what I was saying, but like personal attacks on me, not just,
wow,
I hate that you're an ex-Mormon, but like, you're ugly, you're fat, you're old, you have wrinkles on your face, your kids are going to go to hell, like, you know, all kinds of stuff. For, like people who would threaten me. All this coming from the people who say that they are in Christ's one true church.
Hey, my name is Shalise Ansola, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only listening, head on over to YouTube. Join us over there. Join in on the conversation. It boosts the algorithm and makes our guests feel so supported. We have such an amazing community. I'm so honored to have just so many people rallying around our guests. It just makes us feel so incredible, and our guests as well boost the algorithm, as I mentioned. So today's guest, you probably know her and love her. This is a bittersweet interview. She was one of our first back in the day when C2C started, and now we are talking about her somewhat of an exit out of Ex-Mormon content creation. So thank you so much for joining us, Exmo Lex.
Thank you so much for having me.
I remember when we first got our collab, we were like so hard in your DMs, like trying to get you on.
Oh my gosh.
You're like big time. And we're like, how do we get Exmo Lex? And we have like people messaging you and we're like, we gotta get her on. And we did an episode and it did so well. We're talking about sex and Mormonism, and everyone was just like flabbergasted that we were so honest and raw with that episode.
It's the only way to be.
Yeah, we talked about soaking and earthquaking, and oh man, if there is any controversial TikTok that we have on out of all of our TikToks, it is the one where we talk about soaking and people are up in arms like, I'm Mormon and I've never even heard of that. I'm like, that doesn't make it untrue, but go off. So
Gotta love it.
Yeah, it was a pretty spicy episode. And we talked about how some of it's prevalent in the culture, some of it is just like where you live, and it's all circumstantial, of course. Not every Mormon soaks. Let me just put that out there for the record. But we're here to talk about you and your journey. So yeah, you've been doing this, was it 6 years?
Yeah, almost 6 years.
Yeah, so we watched your video. Of course, I saw the thumbnail and I was like, oh, what's happening? And the comments were just flooded with people talking about how you were a huge, huge reason that they were able to deconstruct Mormonism, one of the first people doing it. So I think we need to talk about the beginning of your story, why you decided to become an ex-Mormon content creator, especially in a space that wasn't really fully fleshed out yet with that type of content.
Yeah, I mean, it all started kind of on accident, because it's not like I went into making my first video thinking that I'm going to do this all the time. I just had some stuff to get off my chest, and I wanted to, first of all, get that stuff off my chest, vent a little bit, because I was feeling a lot of feelings. Also, all of these other ex-Mormon creators had made me feel so heard and understood at a time where I really needed that in my life. I had nobody in my family who had ever left the church, nobody that I could talk to. And I wanted other people to feel as supported as I had towards the beginning of my journey when I was listening to Mormon stories and Zelf on the Shelf. That just blossomed from there. I mean, there were so many people who were so supportive and who were like, this was really great, like make more content. And so I did.
Yeah, I think it was your first video that kind of blew up, right? On YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define blowing up. But I mean, I expected the video to maybe get a couple hundred views or something. And I think it's like into the hundreds of thousands now. I'm not really sure. But I know that a lot of people, way more than I ever expected, saw that video.
It really just goes to show how when you can be vulnerable and honest and authentic, how much people resonate with that, especially in the Mormon space. I want your opinion on this because I feel like within Mormonism, it's such an environment of toxic positivity where you have to have this veneer, this facade of everything's fine, everything's great, life's amazing, I'm following the rules and I'm righteous and worthy and all those things. And so having those real, honest emotions, even just anger and sadness, it feels like you can't necessarily express them to the fullest of extent. And with your video, you're just like, yeah, this is why I'm pissed off. This is why I'm leaving. And I think it was just really refreshing to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it was very raw, like you said. Like I just went and got in my car and filmed it on my cell phone. At the time, I was just in the throes of it all and having gotten in a fight with my dad about the church and about talking about the church, just needing to express myself. And at the time, there weren't a lot of women who were in the ex-Mormon space as creators. Like most of the people that I initially came across were men. And I think that that's another thing that, made the video get more traction was that it was a woman talking about it, and there just weren't that many women at the time doing it. And that's, feedback that I got after I made that video as well.
Let's talk about where you were in that point in your life. Give us a little snapshot as to what's going on around you, your family life, everything, when you made the decision to leave.
Well, when I made the decision to leave the church, I had just turned 25. I had 4 kids that were ages 4 and under. I was going through a period of like trying to better myself as a person. One of those things, obviously, at the time was being a better Mormon. So I was doing my very best to read my scriptures every single day and never forget to say my prayers. And General Conference was coming up. And so I was listening to all the previous conference talks in lead up to the next conference.
Good on you, because even one session of conference is a doozy, but you went and listened to more conference.
I did. I was trying to be prepared and like open to feeling the spirit and the messages that were going to be shared.
Yeah.
So I feel like at that point in my life, I was like at a high point spiritually, according to Mormon beliefs. Like I was doing all the things and I was following all the rules and everything that they asked of me, I was doing it. And then I had a family member who I learned was like struggling with some things. And I guess I should not have assumed, but I assumed that it had to do with the church just based on other factors that had happened. And I'd heard somebody talk about this CES letter. And I was like, oh, I bet that they read that and they've lost their faith. And I have so much faith right now because I am doing all the things that if I read it, I can help them get through this faith struggle.
Classic.
So I Googled it and I read it all in one day. And
wow,
it started this huge, shift in my life of deconstruction and a faith transition, as they say.
Oh, yeah. That's the classic move. That's what I did too. I was like, I'm going to research to prove them wrong. Wait a
Right?
second.
I'm so spiritual. Like, I know I can get through this. I won't lose my testimony.
Uh-huh.
Here we are.
Oh man, I've been that person. Distinctly, this is one of my, I'm sorry for what I said when I was in a cult moments because it's so embarrassing. But I remember distinctly, I was in high school and I wanted to go to one of those Christian Bible camps because it was epic. They had like zip lining and blow up parks and all this crazy stuff. And they invited me because I'm Mormon and obviously like led by Satan in their eyes.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, "Are you sure you want to go to something like that? Like, should we really be going to things that aren't promoted by the church?" And I was like, "Mom, I have such a strong testimony." I can't even say it with a straight face.
It's me.
I have such a strong testimony. The thing is, Mom, they have some of the truth, but I have all of the truth. And I can't unknow all of the truth. And she's like, "You're right, Shalice."
I could never deny what I know.
Yes. And I did, like, not that long after. So, anyways, all that to say, I've been there where you feel like you're a rock. Nothing can shake you. You know what? I'm so much of a rock. I'm going to help you become a rock, and we're going to build together.
Yeah, exactly. Because this person that was in my family was somebody that had been there for me through those things. And so I was like reciprocating, I'm like, oh, you were there for me. You helped me through it. I'm going to help you through this. And we're all going to grow spiritually together and it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah.
And then I left the church like a month later. So
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar, and I still want to have on
Jeremy Reynolds.
Jeremy Reynolds, I still want to have him on. But for those who aren't familiar, can you just briefly describe what the CES letter is?
Yeah, my gosh. The CES letter is like a compilation of questions that a questioning Mormon had for the church educational department. And so it's a lot of, historical things, a lot of questions about Joseph Smith and the way he translated the Book of Mormon and similarities between the Book of Mormon and other books that were popular during Joseph Smith's time, as well as scientific things and things that prophets have done and said. And I mean, it's just a little bit of everything about Mormonism that is questionable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. It's crazy how life-changing this one tiny little book could be. It was incredibly eye-opening. And it wasn't just that, like, I read the book and was like, oh, I just don't believe the church anymore. It was like, this brings into question a lot of things that I've never considered, never thought that I needed to question before. It didn't just make me stop believing in the church, it made me question the church for the first time. And from there, going and doing research and asking from many different sources, going to the church website and saying, is this true? Where did this come from? I've never heard this before. And seeing them admit, like, yeah, that actually is true. And being like, well, why didn't I ever hear about it in 25 years of being an active member?
Yep.
That's nuts.
That is the ticket. That's what it is right there. When you're in a cult, a high control group, high control religion, you don't know what you don't know. And so when I started looking into the church, this was before the CES letter came out, I started having those same questions. I'm like, wait, why didn't anyone ever bring up the head in a hat thing? Like, why am I just now learning about this? And so it brings to light things that you didn't even know were supposed to be a thing and made you wonder, wait, were they purposely leaving out this information and lying to us? Were they purposely twisting things? And then because it came out, they had to start providing answers to where now, if you go on the church website, they, like you said, they admit to almost everything.
Yeah.
But you have to really look for it. It's not out in the open. They're not saying it over the pulpit. You have to search and dig and dig and dig on the website to find it. But then they can say, well, we never said otherwise. It's right here. We didn't lie. It's been here the whole time. So that's the tricky thing.
And it's frustrating. Like, it's frustrating growing up in it and attending seminary and doing all of the things that were expected of me, but never getting the full truth from them.
Still being in the dark.
Right. Some people act like it's not that big of a deal. Like, oh, the way that Joseph Smith translated the plates, like, why does it matter so much? It matters a lot, actually, because it calls into question absolutely everything else. Because if one thing is hidden for whatever reason, what else are you hiding?
Yeah.
And why?
I feel like the whole idea of, if you think about the translation, he put a rock in a hat, put his head into the hat, and the rock supposedly lit up with characters or whatever. Can we just pause for a moment and talk about where that rock came from, how he was a treasure digger before that? Why did no one tell us about his past doing treasure hunting and conning people out of money? I don't know, because it probably negates everything that comes after that as one big con. And so that's where it feels so betraying where you're like, wait, I've only been given these half truths, and the entire picture paints a totally different context. I mean, he's sacrificing dogs at these treasure digging things and claiming that these angels or these guardians are pulling the treasure down into the earth further, and that's why they're not finding anything, instead of thinking, oh, maybe there wasn't treasure to begin with. But he's purposely conning people using the same stone. That's relevant information.
It is. It is. And like you said, like, so what does that mean for everything else? What does it mean for everything that came after that?
Yeah.
It's not looking good.
Yeah. So I wanted to get into the weeds a little bit with the specifics because I want people to understand, especially if you're a current Mormon watching this, we're not trying to say anyone who's Mormon is stupid or anyone who's Mormon just doesn't want to know things or, they're being blinded. Like, we want people to understand the full scope of what it means to be a Mormon, a true believing Mormon, and find out this information that truly feels like a betrayal, and then what, like, the full scope of what that means afterwards. So when you realize and you find out the things you didn't know, it opens this world, this rabbit hole of information that you got to figure out. Now let's talk about Masonry. Why are there upside down stars on the temples in the Nauvoo temple and the Salt Lake temple? And why are we talking about Freemason hands and symbols? Let's look into that a little bit. It's not just, okay, I'm going to stop believing. It's, I need to figure out these answers. And that quite often gets people going down these rabbit holes and wanting to expose it, wanting to talk about it, because we feel so dumb for not knowing it before, and we want to share that information. And
Right.
that's why you get such passionate ex-Mormon content creators, because we're like,
Yeah.
"Guys, did you know this stuff?"
Right. And if you did know, why didn't you tell me? Why did nobody tell me?
Yes. Yes. And so that's why it creates such a disconnect between active Mormons and ex-Mormons, and why it's easier for them to just say, you leave the church, but you can't leave it alone, instead of actually
Yeah.
paying attention. Because in their minds, they're like, I grew up in the church, or I've been a member for 20 plus years. I would know this information. The church doesn't hide anything from me, because that's what they've been told. That's what we were told.
Right. We thought that same thing.
Yes, our goal as ex-Mormon content creators, I can't speak for everyone, but I feel like this is true. We want people to have informed consent. We want people
Yes.
to understand what they're following and why, and make sure they understand the history and the roots of the people who supposedly brought the one true church back to the earth. Because if they knew all of the information surrounding these people, we talk about blood atonement, Mountain Meadows massacre, the polygamy with mother-daughter pairs with women who were already pregnant, polyandry. If we're really truly bringing all this to the surface, and you can still look at it and say, that's the church that God wants me to follow, then that's great. I love that for your journey, but we just want people to be informed and educated. We're not trying to bash people. We're not even trying to bash the religion. We're trying to give information, present information, and everyone does it differently. Like, you're very informational with a side of snark, which is great. You got Nuance Ho, who's all snark. Love that. She's the best at that comedy. And then you have the John DeLynns, who are very calm and collected and tell me your story. So whatever brand works for you, everyone is going to deconstruct and want to present things differently. So I want to talk about your brand of ex-Mormon content creation and how you kind of fell into it, how you chose your vibe for your channel.
It's interesting because I feel like it kind of like shifted and changed as I grew and changed in the space. Like, towards the beginning, I had a lot more anger about everything because that's where I was at the time. I was freshly out. I was freshly learning that I had been bamboozled. And I was very snarky towards the beginning, at least like the way I remember it. I was like, and I was learning all the brand new ex-Mormon jokes that I had never known. I was like, oh, like we can be blasphemous now. And so that was reflected, I think, in a lot of my early content. I think that as time went on, you move through the stages of anger, right? And you're not as upset in that sort of way. And you start to be like, well, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, I went through that. And I started feeling more like, I don't think that my main content is mostly, like you said, to put information out there. And if somebody wants to listen, they can. And I did a lot of like informational stuff, but also a lot of like, this is my story. This is what happened to me. These are my experiences. And I wanted to have a space where not only, ex-Mormons could come and listen, but also people who had been members of other cults, people who were still Mormon. And people who are still Mormon aren't going to want to listen to somebody who is making jokes at their expense all the time or who makes them feel bad. And as the time went on and I started to get out of that angry phase and started to be, more compassionate and more understanding of Mormons and the things that they were thinking and the way that they felt, my content shifted a little bit to more reflect that and reflect a more welcoming space. I think, at least that's what I tried to go for everybody. So that if somebody was questioning, they could come to my channel without feeling bad about the stuff I said, because it's already hard enough to start questioning your religion. And I, at some point, realized it actually doesn't matter too much, because people are going to be mad at you and people are going to hate you for talking about Mormonism if you are in any way negative. So, there's not something that you could do to make everybody happy, because they're still going to not like it if you're not overwhelmingly positive. On some level, I do think it was helpful to make a little bit of a shift, to get a little bit less snarky. I mean, I kept some of it, but a little bit less snarky so that there was a wider audience that could be more accepting of hearing what I had to say. And that's, I think, where I ended on.
Yeah. Let's talk about the dark side of being a content creator with a very controversial topic. I mean, as someone who was Mormon, and I'm sure you can attest to this, when anyone would criticize Mormonism, they were criticizing me, my soul, my identity, my personality.
It's a personal attack. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether or not I realized it, it was very personal. And that's what we try to explain when we talk about these groups, any group that we've talked about on our channel. We're not attacking you as a person. We're attacking the systems, not the people. We're attacking the manipulation, the control, the information control. So that's what's so tricky about this space. When you're just trying to give the information, tell people what's going on, they're like, how dare you do this to me? So what are some of the things that made it really difficult to keep going in this space?
Initially, hate comments made me feel a lot worse because I'd never gotten hate comments before.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I used to share my Mormon opinions on the internet all the time. And I never got backlash about it. So, it's funny. I came from this place of feeling like a persecution complex where everybody was out to get me because I'm Mormon. But I never had anybody be mean to me about being Mormon ever. It was when I joined the Ex-Mormon space and started sharing negative opinions about the church and sharing negative experiences I'd had, where all of a sudden I had an influx of people who really hated not only what I was saying, but like personal attacks on me, not just,
wow,
I hate that you're an ex-Mormon, but like, you're ugly, you're fat, you're old, you have wrinkles on your face, your kids are going to go to hell, like, all kinds of stuff. Like people who would threaten me. And it was like, all this coming from the people who say that they are in Christ's one true church.
Sure.
How am I supposed to take that? That I'm just talking about my own life and my own experiences, what I believe. And towards the beginning, like that was obviously hard to hear. And as time went on, like, I've been in the space and been doing this for so long now that if I get a hate comment, I'm just like, there's another one. It doesn't bother me anymore. But, there were times, and I think it is probably reflected in some of my old content where you can see like I got a whole lot of hate comments, and I sometimes did feel pretty bad about it because like, as much as you want to say like, oh no, people's opinions about me don't affect me, like I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I was still growing. I was, it was hard to hear stuff like that from people who I had once considered to be my strongest community.
So what was it that kept you going through all of that?
Honestly, it was the idea that I wanted to help people the way that I had been helped during my journey out of the church.
Yeah.
Because the thing that was the most helpful for me was ex-Mormon content. People who had been in the same place that I had been people who taught me things that the church failed to teach me, people who made, content about not only just informational and historical facts, which is all very helpful, but people who talked about the way they felt during all of that, had created this community that made me feel loved and accepted again after leaving the church and feeling, I didn't have any friends that had left. I didn't have any family that had left. I had nobody to fall back on. And instead it was like, John DeLynn, who was there for me in my saddest moments where I just needed somebody to listen to that was talking about all of these things that I was feeling. And when it got hard, I would think about that. I would think about there's somebody out there right now who's going through what I went through, this really traumatic experience of having your whole worldview crumble around you. And the more information, the more videos I put out there, the more likely it is that somebody who is struggling is going to see something like that. And they're going to be able to get out of it. They're going to be able to feel better. They'll feel supported and loved. And they matter, even though the church is telling them that they've chosen Satan,
Yeah.
So that's what it really came down to, was like, I want to keep going because I want to be there for people if they need it. And, it was helpful for me as well. Like, it's cathartic to sit and to talk about things that have been difficult for you and to talk about how you've overcome and how much better you're doing now.
Yeah. And I think something that adds to the intensity of it is the fact that you're deconstructing in real time. So you didn't have years where you figured it out and then you're like, you know what, I'm going to put some content out about this. You were doing it as you went.
Right. Yeah. I think that I had been out of the church officially for like 4 or 5 months when I first made my channel.
That is nothing.
Yeah. So it was very fresh. And it was like I was still learning stuff. And, I would say that probably I still do learn stuff occasionally. It's just at the time it was like constant. Like, oh my gosh, here's another thing you didn't know about the church. And oh wow, like there's another one. Look at what that prophet said. That's horrible. Glad I left,
Yeah. And I think that also lends to people wanting to be a part of your journey, because that the people who are finding your channel are the ones who are in that exact same position, and they can kind of in real time also deconstruct with you and learn with you. And there's this energy of, holy crap, guys, I didn't know this. Did you?
Right.
And presenting it that way.
That's the way it felt a lot of the times, is like logging on and being like, hello, friends. What are we talking about today? Here's the tea about the church that I just found out.
So what is your primary source, or did you have one, or was it just Googling and other creators to help you figure out what you didn't know?
A lot of it actually came directly from the church, because I started realizing like this is what captures attention, is when you realize that like they admit to a lot of this. A lot of it is still on the website, or like old church books. I used to go to thrift stores and look through the books and see what I could find written by old prophets and things like that, because I think hearing it come from their own mouths makes a big difference.
Yes.
I would even make short form content where I either had, sound clips or videos of these prophets saying these things, or if that wasn't available, I would use, an AI voice generator to show the quote and what they said, because I think that makes a really big impact. I would Google and I would do searches and I would look at all kinds of stuff, but I loved especially finding it from the church, because that is very impactful.
It's irrefutable, because if someone's like, that's not true, here's a church website link.
Right.
Go check it out
exactly.
yourself. Yeah.
And there was, I like a most common comment from Mormons is like, that's not real. And being able to be like, yes, it is, directly from them. Here is what they said.
Yes.
It feels good.
Oh, for sure. Because it also gives this air of, I'm a better Mormon than you because I've actually done all the research on the church website.
Right. Like, where have you been?
Like, it's been there. Like, why haven't you checked it out? But yeah, I totally know that feeling. And I've done it before. In the early days, I had a lot of those comments, because I think when I first started the channel, all of my network was Ex Mormon. So in the beginning, we had a lot of Ex Mormons on, because that was basically my network of people who I could reach out to and be like, hey, come on my channel, I'm brand new. And so I did get a lot of those comments in the early days, begging me to repent, and you need to search and return to the church and forgiveness and da 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 da. And I would always link the stuff, because I was annoyed, right? And I was also
Right.
in the phase of being bitter because that was actually around the time that I started learning about Mormonism because I was writing my book and I wanted to make sure that I was writing accurately about Mormonism. And that's what I found out. I knew nothing about Mormonism as a
Right.
Mormon. And 10 years
Oh,
after leaving, I was like, wait a second, there's a lot of stuff I missed here. So I was kind of deconstructing myself, similar to you when I first started the podcast, but then we got into other topics and then got whisked away in this dark, dark world of cults. But yeah, I know the feeling of like, guys, this is crazy. Look, it's right on the church website. And then they change the website and then you can't
right.
find it anymore. But I got a screenshot, like they're
Yes.
always trying to pull squirrely stuff like that.
Yeah. Like on the one hand, it's feels really good to be able to pull one of those out. Like, haha, look at this. I have proof. But it's also devastating and like knowing that like, somebody comes to your channel and starts losing their faith in Mormonism.
It's hard.
That's a difficult thing to go through. And every time that happens, I'm like happy for them that they're free. But like it's hard. It's a hard thing to go
Yeah.
through. And I on some level sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I feel bad. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to have
Yeah.
given you this information because I know that it's going to be a struggle for a bit." But I think that most people come through on the other side happier and healthier than they've ever been.
Hmm.
So that helps.
Yeah, I will say that I think my replies got a little bit more sympathetic because at first I was annoyed, like, how dare you come on my channel telling me to repent when
Right.
it's on the church website? Like, look it up yourself. And then it's kind of morphed into, yeah, this actually is true. I would urge you to research it yourself. And that's all you have to say. Like, I urge
Right.
you to do the research. Don't take my word for it.
Right.
You have the
Yeah.
world at your disposal. You can look it up. You can figure out if it resonates or figure out what other people have been
Yes.
saying about it, figure out the
Google
truth.
is free. Go for it.
Yeah. Yep, yep. So with that, we're talking about deconstruction and how difficult it is. And you're going through this while you're on your channel and you're finding community with other ex-Mormon creators. Can we talk about how your family responded to this?
Yeah. It was, it was something. I think that I had made like one, maybe two videos, and I got a call from my mom, and she was like, I could hear it in her voice on the verge of tears. And she was like, I just heard from your brother, and are you making anti-Mormon YouTube videos?
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, you make it sound like it's, this horrible thing. But then, I tried to see it from her perspective, and I guess it kind of was a horrible thing. And I tried to explain to her, like, I'm not anti-Mormon. Like, it's a term that's used to like paint people who have left the church as evil and
Yep.
doing the work of Satan himself.
Yep.
I am just trying to make a community, to find people who have gone through what I've gone through, to put information out there, to tell my story, because this is a really big deal to me. And I think that it was really hard for my parents at first to think like, oh, our perfect, precious princess daughter who finished her personal progress and got married in the temple and all this stuff is
Progress.
an anti-Mormon. Thankfully, especially like my mom is just the best person I've ever met. Now, over the years, we talked about it a little bit more and a little bit more. And I feel like at this point, even though she still identifies as a Mormon, and obviously I am not, we can talk about almost anything and we're very open with each other. And she's very, very accepting of what I do online. And I really appreciate her for that because, I've seen that it could go other ways with my husband's family. They disowned us. And
Wow.
being ex-Mormon and being vocal about it was part of what led to that. Seeing the way that it can be so different between families, knowing that my parents still love and support me regardless is a really, really beautiful thing. And I was very grateful to them for being able to see beyond anti-Mormonism.
Yeah. Did they ever talk about your videos? Do you know if they watched them?
I know that my mom didn't watch them. I think that my dad probably watched some of them a little bit. We haven't really talked about it as much. I'm closer with my mom, but I do know that a few years after I started, one of my brothers ended up leaving the church as well. And it was in part because of my videos. So that was heartwarming.
Heartwarming for you, devastating for your parents, probably.
Well, by the time this came around, they'd already watched me go through it. And as the youngest and the only daughter, I think that it couldn't get any more like difficult than that. So once he slowly made his way away from the church as well, it was just like, oh, there goes another one, I don't think that they really cared.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 2 older brothers, and my oldest brother, not really interested in the church ever. So, that had been a long time, and he wasn't like anti-Mormon, but he just didn't go to church.
Yeah.
And so that was like a non-issue. And then there was me, the scary anti-Mormon child, who came out as bisexual online, So that was like all a lot for them. And when my other brother left, I think that it really was just like such a non-issue.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you didn't ever feel that ostracization from your family, your immediate family?
I felt it a little bit from my dad before I made my first video. And that's like
Really?
why I made my first video, because it wasn't, I told them I left the church, and they were very, very loving and accepting. They were able to get over that. I started, I was commenting on YouTube videos, commenting on Facebook in Ex-Mormon spaces, because that was where I was finding a new community. And I left a comment on a Zelf on the Shelf video that was on Facebook, just saying that like I related to it, like I understood it. And my dad saw that comment, and he was upset. He was really upset by it, and we got in a fight.
How did your dad see the comment on an Ex-Mormon page?
On Facebook, like when your friends comment on stuff, it would show you.
Oh,
So,
stupid Facebook.
yeah. I hadn't even thought about it, but he saw it because of that. And so he was really upset, and we got in a fight about it. And he basically was like, I don't care that you left the church. And his actual like quote was, good for you. You left the church, but keep your mouth shut about it.
Ooh.
And that stung.
You're like, Dad, watch this.
Yeah. And I think it was either like the next day or 2 days later that I made my first YouTube video, because I just couldn't get it out of my head. Like that's where we ended the conversation. And I was like, that's not fair. When I was Mormon, I wanted to go on a mission. Everybody was encouraging me to spread the gospel, to publicly bear my testimony of the church all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not okay now that I don't believe anymore to talk about why I don't, or even to just say that I'm happy that I left, or I understand somebody else's point of view, what they're going through. Like, oh, yeah, that pissed me off. I'm not going to lie.
And I think he totally underestimated the fact that you were no longer in the boundaries of the church. If he would have said that when you were still in, your place would have been to sit down and be quiet and be a good, submissive Mormon girl.
Right.
You just broke out of the box and you're like, ah, hell no.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny to look back on. And I mean, we thankfully were able to get through our issues, and we have a good relationship now. And I don't think I've ever like told him that he's the reason, but he's actually the entire reason. So there's that.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I think it's a powerful message for every parent out there who wants the best for their child. You have to give them space. You have to give them a voice. You have to listen to them, or they're going to want to rebel against you. You were a grown woman when he said that to you, and you're like, I'm sorry, what now?
Right. I'm like, I've got my own kids. Like I'm living my own life.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. It's like, I wasn't putting out content. I was just responding to somebody else. I'm not sharing memes about the church on my Facebook for all of my friends to see. I just was existing peacefully and quietly, honestly. He just didn't like it.
Yeah. And I feel like from my perspective, I want to hear your thoughts on why you think he was saying that. I feel like it's because as parents in the Mormon church, there is so much pressure to have perfect little Mormon children. And if they deviate in any sort of way, it's a reflection on you and your ability to share the gospel, or to teach them the gospel in the right way. Do you feel like that's why you think he was embarrassed?
Maybe a little bit. The thing is, like, he was going through his own issues at the time. I think that, he was able to keep up appearances, although he was going through a lot of really difficult things at the time. But me leaving the church and even having a little bit of something on social media where our family might see did, reflect on him in some way. So even though he was keeping up appearances for his issues, all of a sudden, like, oh, here's my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, the issues that he was dealing with at the time, even though he had his own issues with the church as well, it was almost like he was angry that, like, I was going to go ahead and talk about it while he was just quietly brooding. So I don't know. It's hard to get into somebody else's head like that. But I do think that a little bit of his anger was him. What's the word?
Maybe projecting.
Yeah. Well, he was projecting a little bit, I think, because he had some things that we talked about it. When I left, he was one of the first people that I told. He had issues with the church too. So it was interesting that he was the person out of everybody that found out that was like the most upset that I would talk about it.
Yeah. I feel like maybe it's a case that you're being vocal about it and being public about it threatened his safety, because if someone came to him and said, your daughter thinks da 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 da, what do you think?
Right.
He would have to keep up appearances, defend it, even though he doesn't necessarily believe in himself either. And that brings him out of his comfort zone, and he wasn't ready to maybe confront the reality of the things that he was questioning through you. So I don't know. That's just a thought.
Yeah. I think that, it's strange when you go from, being Mormon your whole life. And at least for me, my existence within Mormonism and my existence in a Mormon family all felt very idyllic. And getting older and then leaving the church and then, maturing and finding out more of what was going on beyond my, childhood view, it was like, oh, not everything is perfect in Mormonism. Not all the people in Mormonism are perfect. And here I see like major issues happening with people who claim to be, perfect temple worthy Mormons that are actually all sorts of things. Maybe they're alcoholics and it's just hidden. Maybe one of them cheated on their wives, and because he was in like a bishopric position, that he just got away with it. There was no problems and nobody found out. And it's weird, like thinking that, I don't know if you had this experience, but for me as a child and even as a young adult, I would look at all the people that I knew in Mormonism and be like, oh, they're all perfect. We're all really good people. We're all temple worthy Mormons. And then, like, that's not actually the case at all.
Yeah, which brings up a point, and I can't wait to hear your answer. What is your favorite ex-Mormon content creator response to, yeah, well, the church, the members aren't perfect, but the church is?
That right there is exactly the reason why I gravitated towards mostly using Mormon sources, because I could say, this is the church.
Yeah.
The people who lead the church are the church.
Yes.
The church as an entity can't be perfect because the people who lead the church aren't perfect. And of course, their response is going to be like, the church is led by Christ. Where is he then,
The thing that drives me crazy is when they say, especially when they say the gospel is perfect. I'm like, what is the gospel? What is the gospel to you? Is it the set of rules that Joseph Smith put out? Is it the D&C, the way that you are supposed to have polygamy in heaven? Is it the word of wisdom? Like, what is the gospel if not the things written down by the guy who either had a revelation about it or, quote, translated it? What are we like? What is the entity that you are describing? Because to me, it's just all of this culmination of ideas that come together that create a set of beliefs that were written by a man who we know is extremely fallible. I mean, we don't even have to go into all the ways Joseph Smith was a con artist. We touched on
Right.
it. Like, what is the gospel if not everything that the guys created it to be?
Right. It's frustrating because it's an easy thing for them to fall back on. But the gospel, to me, it comes back to what the church is and who created the church and who runs the church.
Mm-hmm.
And how can any of those things be perfect? Because we live in a human world, you know?
Exactly. That's what's so interesting, because you really can't put a finger on it. It's just this entire idea of things that make up a religion. So, yeah, that's one of my annoyances. I'm like, and we're not saying that people are perfect and that every church has to have perfect people. We're just pointing out all the ways in which it's valuable.
Right. Like, I'm not expecting perfection, but like, you know, I would settle for you not being racist and homophobic. It's
That's
not
a
that much
start.
to ask, right? Like,
That's a
I
start.
don't know.
Okay, one more question about this, and then we need to get more into the content creation side. What was your biggest, holy shit, I can't believe I didn't know that about the church moment?
I think it's the Book of Abraham.
That was a deal breaker for me too.
Yeah. I had no idea. It changed everything because it, again, even if it's just one thing, it put everything else into question.
Yep.
And knowing that Joseph Smith lied about stuff, like that's, again, with Joseph Smith, I'm not expecting a perfect man, but acting as a prophet, he should have been damn near, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was hard for me.
Tell everyone what the Book of Abraham is if they don't know.
In Mormonism, it's scripture. And we were told that Joseph Smith translated this document and wrote the story of what it said, right? Finding out later that the Book of Abraham is just a common Egyptian funerary text that had nothing to do with what Joseph Smith said it said.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, that was huge for me. That was a big shock.
Yeah. So back in the day, Joseph Smith was like, "Oh, traveling mummy show. I would like to purchase one, please." And then he finds this document and he's at the height, right? He's like, "I'm the man. I got the Book of Mormon. I got I'm the mayor." I don't know if it was the same time period, but he was like on top of the world. And he was like, "This text, this Reformed Egyptian is what he called it. I can translate it. I got you." And so he writes it all down. But that's the funny part, is he didn't realize that eventually people would actually be able to translate it. We actually can.
Which you'd think that you'd have the foresight, but he's not a prophet, so I guess he couldn't.
Yeah. And so now, though, because they can't get around that one, for me, that was the nail in the coffin. My 12-hour research session, sundown to sunup, when I was like, all right, let's figure this out. I found that and I was like, oh, then he made it all up. Like, it was so clear to me that I was like, if he can just make stuff up, what's stopping him from making up the entire Book of Mormon? What's stopping him from making up everything? It was just so obvious.
And it reads exactly like the Book of Mormon. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just a different story that he made up. And he was a really good storyteller. So it makes sense that he would be able to just pull that out of his ass, you know? Or out of a hat, as it were.
Do you remember what it said in the Book of Abraham? I'm trying to think back to my Momo days, but I feel like it has something to do with the afterlife, right? Like, pretty important Mormon theology is in that.
Yeah, that's why it's part of their scripture, and it still is, even though we know that he lied about what it said. He just made it up, and they're like, no, this is scripture, actually.
Because they say now on their website, well, he didn't translate it. He was just inspired by it.
He was inspired by it, which is the lies. The lies abound.
Yes. So was there anything else afterward that, like, some of the more obscure things that you found out about either Mormon history or the beginning of the church, or like things that they lied to us about that you were just, what?
I mean, honestly, almost everything that's in the CES letter was news to me. Like, I knew about polygamy. I did not realize Joseph Smith participated so strongly. Almost everything I learned in the CES letter was like very shocking. But one of the things that stood out to me when I was deconstructing was how there were so many prophets and apostles who just completely directly contradicted each other, all the way from the beginning to now, where they still will do it sometimes. And you'll be like, okay, you know, I always heard as a Mormon that when these men are speaking over the pulpit for general conference or whatever, that is them speaking as a prophet. Well, how come two of them said completely different things? Or how come, you know, Joseph Fielding Smith talked about these planets that we're going to rule over as gods one day. And then Gordon B. Hinckley goes and tells everybody, actually, we don't believe that. And then President Nelson, also talking about the worlds that we will have. And then like a couple years later, the church website being like, no, we don't believe that. It's just like
the flip-flopping is hard.
Yeah,
and it's not
it's
just
ridiculous.
the flip-flop, it's the gaslighting. We never said that.
We never said that.
Meanwhile, all the millennials and the boomers are like,
rise up.
What do you mean?
I have it written in a book. Like, oh, yeah. It was something that like helped me deconstruct, honestly, because I was like, oh, this is very clear. Somebody's lying.
Yeah. So all of this, clearly, we both get worked up. I'm like, every time I talk about it, I'm just like, oh man, and there's this and then there's this. So yeah, it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of bandwidth to talk about this stuff, to research this stuff, to combat the negative naysayers about it and all of this. Content creation takes a toll. You've been doing this for 6 years. So
right.
When were you like, oh man, I think I'm tired. I think I just need to give this up?
You know, it was pretty recently. A couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a friend that I met through doing YouTube. You know, we're just chit-chatting, and she brought up that she just wasn't really interested in Mormonism anymore. And I had kind of, you know, I already knew that I wasn't going to do YouTube forever. Like, I had mentioned that on my channel. Like, this is not a forever thing. But when she said that, I was like, same. And it kind of changed everything for me, because in that moment I was like, you know what? I have been passionate about this for so long, and I've talked about so many things, and I've shared my opinions so often. And I don't really know if there's a whole lot else that I want to say, at least in a long form YouTube type video.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it like over the next several days and was like, actually, like, I do think that I want to be done. And it wasn't just that I decided I, didn't want to anymore. It was also, there's other things going on in my life that I have more interest in, more passionate about, that I haven't talked about forever. And, I'm really busy with my kids. I'm really busy with my other interests. There's so much that I want to do and accomplish in this one life that I have. And I don't want to spend the time necessary to sit down and research, film, edit, upload YouTube videos anymore. It's it takes a lot of time. And I was only putting out one video a week.
It does take a lot of time. So for people who aren't familiar, or for your workload specifically, what would it take from start to finish to get one video out?
It kind of would depend a lot on the video. For, certain videos where I'm talking about like the bite model, it was a lot of looking into, okay, which point on here do we want to talk about? Sometimes it would be looking into, things that prophets said. Sometimes it would be looking into the history. Sometimes it would be reading old, church books. And those ones, especially took longer because there's no way for me to like scroll through and find keywords. I actually had to sit down and read the book. That's, where a lot of the time came in, was doing the research for it. Although I would say that's probably my favorite part as well. I really enjoy reading and learning things. So that was fun for me. But then, I would have to film it, sit down and, take out the camera and the lights and get the memory card and make sure I charge the battery for the camera, sit down and film it. And then my least favorite part always has been the editing.
Yeah.
Because I just hate having to sit there and listen to myself talk while I go through cut stuff out. It's the worst. But it's also very time consuming. And, getting the video, there were a couple times too where I accidentally somehow deleted the footage and had to like redo an entire video.
Worst. Oh man, it's the worst.
Yeah. But getting it uploaded and all that stuff, it just, sometimes I could get a video out there that didn't take as much effort. Like if I asked people to send in stories, because then I could just read the stories. And so I actually was doing a lot of that in the last few months, as I've had a lot going on in my personal life. But in general, if it was one I had to sit down and do research for, it was taking hours. And I started honestly feeling like I'd get to the end of the day and be like, I don't have enough time to do the things that I want to do. And when I looked between, like, I've got this TikTok platform and a YouTube platform, And between the two of these, TikTok is way easier to manage. And if I want to put out short form content, I can just make a video and I'm done in like 10 minutes versus YouTube where it's a whole production. So when I
Yeah.
was deciding like, okay, I do want to keep one of these, TikTok was the easy choice for that reason.
That makes sense. So you're not completely closing the door on Ex Mormon content in its entirety.
Yeah, I still, I'm obviously always going to be interested in this. It's such a huge part of my own personal history as well as my genealogy, and my family are all still members, most of them. And it is something that interests me. Cults interest me. And I think they always will. But being able to, if something pops up in church news or I learn something new or somebody has a question, especially if people have questions about it, I can just put videos out very quickly on a TikTok platform, and it doesn't have to be professional and it doesn't have to look nice. And I've always been a like shitty YouTuber, I'm not going to lie. So being
No,
able to that's the way
that's
I
not
see it, but like
true.
being able to just have an easy way to put out content and say the things that I want to say
Yeah,
really appeals to me at this point in my life. So
yeah,
I'm gonna, I'm gonna obviously gonna keep up all the YouTube videos that I have. I think that there's information in there that's very helpful for people, and they can still find it. It's always gonna exist.
yeah,
And I'll probably, do some TikToks and maybe occasionally throw in a YouTube video. But the TikToks I'll probably put on YouTube as shorts and keep it going in that way. But this way will be a lot more low key for me, and it's going to give me way more time to focus on other projects.
it really is a time suck. I mean, people
Yeah.
ask me and Jonathan all the time, how much time a week do you spend on Cults to Consciousness? And I'm like, 24/7. What's the question? Like, what do you
Always.
mean?
Well,
Every day.
and that's the thing too. It's like it's social media, right? And so you gotta have the Facebook and the Instagram and the YouTube and the TikTok and the podcast, like all these different things.
Yeah.
And then you're having to like keep up with the comments, and you're replying to the comments and checking the comments and getting emails from all sorts of people who want to do brand deals and stuff. And honestly, like with the brand deals, I like kind of started just not responding to them because I was like, I don't have time, and it had gotten to a point like, and that's one of the things leading up to this decision where I was like, I am kind of half-assing that entire, side of this. I get emails for brand deals and I don't half the time, this is so terrible. Half the time I wouldn't even respond and say no,
Yeah.
thank you. I just would ignore it because I was busy doing other stuff.
Girl, if I told you how many emails, I'm going to tell you over 1,000 unread emails in our account right now. And every day it gets bigger and I'm so overwhelmed. I'm like,
It's so
I
overwhelming.
can't even open them. Like it's so much, especially because you get spam emails that are like, we're from Adobe and
Right.
we want you to do
Right.
it. And you look at
Yeah.
the return email and it's like all these numbers at numbers.com. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how do I
Here's another one of
get
these.
rid of these? They're not even legit. Yeah, it's a lot. It takes a lot of bandwidth. So were you, I mean, golden handcuffs, right? You built your channel. You're over 40,000, right? Like this is a big platform that you've spent 6 years building. And obviously there's a monetary aspect too, getting compensated with Google ads as far as with views and everything. Is it hard for you to let it go?
It is on some level. There were points with YouTube where I was making a lot more or a lot less just because, it fluctuates.
Yeah.
But I wasn't making, and this is funny because Mormons are always like, you just do this for the money. I wasn't making that much money. And it's not like, it's a make or break thing. And I'm like, I could literally probably make more money donating plasma than doing YouTube in a month.
Lex.
So like it's I'll just go donate plasma because I don't have to put any effort into that. I can sit there and read a book.
You just sit there.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm good to let it go.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, at some point, even if you were making a significant amount, sometimes the work and everything it takes to put into it, it just outweighs the benefits, and you just have to be honest with yourself. And so, for you to be able to say, "Hey guys, it's been a fun ride, but this doesn't serve me anymore." that's a really big deal because sometimes people do get caught up in the, well, I just have to keep going because I've gone this far. So I think it's great that you're doing what's best for you and your mental health and the time that you want to have with your kids and your family and everything.
Yeah, I think that I would have continued doing YouTube even if I had never monetized it
Yeah.
because I was really, really passionate about it.
Yeah.
And, I started monetizing like I don't know, several months in, but I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. There's so many people that I looked forward to reading their comments and having them as part of this community. And to know that like, I didn't create Ex-Mormonism or the Ex-Mormon community as a whole, but the followers that I had felt like they were my community. It felt like, like
Yeah.
us together,
Well, yeah. They showed up for you.
Right. And, they would follow me where I went. I go on Mormon stories, and the people that watched me were so happy to see me over there. And they're just so kind. I met so many amazing people, so many, and it's what I really honestly needed at the time where I was going through something so hard and I felt like I'd lost everything. And then here's this group of people who, like, overwhelmingly, were very positive, we're very kind, we're compassionate, we're very loving. It showed me this whole other side of life. And, I had this view as a Mormon that like ex-Mormons, anti-Mormons, bad people. And I'm like, these people are beautiful people. And I got to meet so many of them and become friends with so many of them. So yeah, I think that I would have continued making videos for a long time, regardless of monetizing or not. And this is just, me being ready to take back some hours in my week to put into other things that I am feeling more desire to do.
Tell people about the goats.
Well, my mom and dad, I don't think I ever really talked about this on my YouTube channel, but my parents got divorced last year. And my mom had started dating, and she found this guy that is great. We love him. They have, they've been having a really great run, and they've decided that they want to start a farm. They want to do it as like not only just for fun because like farming and animals and they're passionate about that, but like they want to bring other people into it. They want to maybe like do like a petting zoo kind of thing, have it open to the public so that they can have baby animals and that kids can come and see them. And my mom's boyfriend, he's like, I want to take these pets like out into the world. I want to take goats to the Capitol. I want to take them on a motorcycle ride. I want to do all these fun things with them. And I want social media so that we can share it and that people, are going to recognize the goats.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I do have like some social media knowledge. And so I started helping them build their social media. I actually shared about them on TikTok, and they were able to gain a lot of followers. And so this is like their new thing. And they live where my mom's boyfriend lives close by. And so I grew up on a farm. I started helping with, feeding the goats and feeding the ducklings and stuff. And because I enjoy it so much, I'm like, okay, well, like, I'll take some videos, like, I'll help you film, I'll help you make stuff. And so a lot more time than I ever would have thought is now suddenly being taken up with baby animals. And I am loving it. And editing videos for them, I was like, this is way more fun than watching myself talk to a camera. Like, I realized like I've gotten bored. I've gotten bored with doing that. But editing videos is fun when it's baby goats and baby ducks.
Uh-huh.
So that's been like taking up a lot of my time, but making me extremely happy.
I love that. It keeps popping up in my head that you need to have a tagline or a t-shirt or something that says "Gone with the Goats."
I love that. I'll have to
Hashtag
float
gone with
that
the
idea.
goats. You can take it. I think it would be so fun. And I'm just picturing like a goat in the side cart of a motorcycle with glasses on for the logo. Just gone with the
Oh
goats.
my gosh, yes. We were joking about it the other day because we took one of them to the Capitol building in Boise. And I was like, yeah, the goat's going to vote. And then we put him in like a little jacket. And I was like, oh, goat with a coat. Like,
Oh my God.
I'm having too much fun.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, I'm so happy that you're doing something that you're passionate about, and I'm sure people are going to follow you in that journey to the community that you've built that is interested in you as a person. And that is one of the beautiful things about having your own channel is people genuinely care about you. I'm always a little surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be. It probably shouldn't be, but whenever we post something personal on our community page or something and the love we get, I'm like, oh, people care.
People care. It's the
So
sweetest thing. I love
yeah,
it.
because I
Yeah.
don't do this for me. I do it for the people we're bringing on, right? And so it's sweet when I get some comments from people about our personal life. I'm like, oh, that's so nice.
It is so nice. And I mean, it shows that this community is full of good people. I think that that's a really good thing for other people to know, for, active Mormons to know, like, these people have changed my life in the most positive way. And they're really, really, truly good people.
Yeah.
And I'm really
Yeah.
grateful for them. I just hope that other people are inspired to share their own stories. I think every ex Mormon who has something to say should say it. And I think the more people who are open with their story of their life within Mormonism and their exit from Mormonism, the more that current Mormons will see us as human beings, not as devil worshippers, not as anti Mormons, not as these hurtful things that prophets have said about us. We are just people. And the more people that share their stories, I think that that will become more normalized and that people will see us as people who have a difference of opinion, not just
Mhm.
evil, anti Mormon, Satan worshiping awful people.
The most recent general conference last weekend, we are now mere footnotes. We have been described as footnotes, people who have left. We are not footnotes, we are headliners.
We are.
I didn't prep you for this, but do you have a Linda listen aside from that amazing advice you just gave?
Linda, listen, just because people leave the church doesn't mean they're bad people.
Yes.
I think that you can be a beautiful person both in and out of the church, but informed consent matters.
I agree. Linda, listen. Listen to the people who leave the church. We have some pretty good things to say.
Perfect. I love it.
Yes, this has been so great. I'm so glad we reconnected. We saw your video and we're like, oh my gosh, we need to call her immediately. And then we recorded the next day. So I'm so glad that you were on board with coming back on and sharing your
Of
story. It's
course.
been so fun chatting with you, and we're going to miss you on YouTube.
Well, thank you so much. It feels very full circle, and I'm really excited for what the future holds for me and for you guys. It's so fun.
Thank you. Yeah. So what are your handles for people who want to find you still on TikTok or other places?
So I've got my Ex Mormon or Exmo Lex TikTok. I think is just at Exmo Lex. And I'll still be posting there when I feel like it. I've got a non-Mormon related TikTok as well, where it's just for fun. And it's at Nos Ravi. It's actually my last name backwards. So it's NOSSRAVI. And if you want to follow along with the farming stuff that I'm doing with my mom, their TikTok is at the littlest farm. And it's like
Cute.
the little dot est farm because his last name is Little. So it's kind of a play off of that. The
That's
littlest farm.
cute.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Well, we will put all of the links in the description. Obviously, make sure you go and check out her content that is still on YouTube. Get those views rolling. Keep spreading the word about her content because it is so valuable. Lex, you have to come to Mexico with us at the end of October. Say yes.
Oh my gosh. I don't know anything
On the
about this. You're
spot.
springing it upon me.
I am. Well, I always talk about the vacation at the end. We went to Costa Rica for the first time with some viewers, and it was so awesome. There was 20 of us. There were 20 of us, and it was so much fun. We're hitting replay, but this time going to the coast of Mexico, the Oaxacan coast, and it's going to be beachy, and we're going to swim in waterfalls,
Oh,
and we're going to island hop, and we're going to do cooking classes with their original cookie. Oh, it's going to be so fun. I'll send you
sounds
the link.
amazing. Okay.
So, guys, Thank you so much for watching. Leave those words of encouragement for Lex down below. Tell her thank you for the 6 years of effort she has put into YouTube and all of her shorts and social media. And it's the best way to support the podcast. It's free and it boosts the algorithm. And we love you guys so much for that. If you want to support further, we do have Patreon, patreon.com/cults to consciousness. We have merch at cults2consciousness.com. We have the I'm sorry for what I said when I was in a cult t-shirt. That's the fan favorite and the cult favorite, if you will. And I think that's it. If you like this video, I'll link 2 more down here below. You can check out our original video, like back when I was in the bedroom and it was just kind of a mess, but it was a great conversation. So you can go check that out. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.